I'm going to teach you how to make pen flush. What is pen flush? Pen flush is quite simply a liquid that you can use to flush out a pen. I get a lot of questions from people who ask me, does pen flush actually make sense? Is it necessary? Is it good to use that? And my answer is, well, yeah, it has its uses. So what you do is, first of all, don't expect a miracle, because pen flush is meant to be used after you flush your pen with water. So don't expect that rinsing your pen with pen flush just once is going to give you a clean pen. That's not how it works. What you do is you take your pen, you rinse it with water until it's clean, and then you can use some pen flush. And what that will do, quite simply, is just make sure that any ink that is left over will be dissolved and, you know, give it a little bit of extra cleaning. I do not use pen flush every time I clean a pen. But once in a while, if I have a pen that is particularly dirty or something, I've used an ink that was a little bit more aggressive than I thought it was, that sticks a bit more, takes a bit longer to clean, etc., then I like to use pen flush. Now, the point is, if you buy pen flush, you can do that. B.R.E makes it. You've got, what's it called? J&B's pen flush, a perfect pen flush, I believe that's called. You can get it from a bunch of sources. The Goulet Pen Company sells their own. And of course, that's easy because you get your stuff. It's pre-made. It's a secret recipe, and you know, you will get stuff that works. But for me, I find that stuff way too expensive, relatively speaking. I mean, you can make your own. I've made my own. I've used it for quite a long time, and it works just fine. So I'm going to teach you how to make mine. This is my personal pen flush recipe. First of all, you're going to need a container. You need a container because you need to store your pen flush in something, and I find these little jelly jars. You get confiture jam in there. This stuff is great. Plastic bottles don't work too well because a lot of stuff actually evaporates through plastic over time, and it's not going to happen in a week. But if you really store it for years, then that could happen. That's one of the reasons there are not a whole lot of plastic in bottles. So I like to use these simple glass containers, and the other reason I like them is that you don't need, I mean, you could use a liter bottle of the stuff, but first of all, I find this to be a pleasant size because you can just dip a pen in there, you see, that's just useful. And secondly, once this stuff gets a little bit grubby, you just throw it out. You don't have a liter bottle of the stuff. So most people would recommend that you put your pen flush in a big container and then you just, you know, pour more of it in a small container. I just make it in a small container, and that's pretty much it. Alright? Now I know that this holds about roughly 27 milliliters of liquid. Okay? Now what I like to do is I take water, just regular H2O from a tap. If you really want to, you can boil it, but I don't do that. If you really want to, you can use distilled water. That's great. That's even softer on your pens. I don't do that. I live in the Netherlands. We have extremely pure drinking water. So tap water, believe me, unless you're in a place where there are sick amounts of calcium in the water, I wouldn't worry about it too much. And then you just take some ammonia. Common household ammonia. I buy this in big bottles. This is from the great Dutch supermarket Albert Heijn. It doesn't really matter at all. Just get ammonia. And get the thin ammonia, not the really thick stuff. This is just the very liquid ammonia. I think this is the cheapest I could get, and it works just fine. This is a little bit of, it looks very disgusting, but it is in fact just dishwashing detergent. Afwasmiddel in Dutch. So, this is all you need. Now what I like to do is I take about 10% of ammonia, and that's what I start with. Ammonia is nice because it helps dilute ink, and that is why after you've used your flush, so you first use water, then you use your flush to get those last nasty bits of ink out, and then you flush it again with normal water, because if you leave that ammonia in, you know, you could be diluting your ink, which is something you don't want to do. Here's a simple sample vial, 6 milliliters. That's what I'm going to use for measuring. Now, really, it doesn't matter that much. I like to put in about 10% of ammonia, so that's just a little under 3 milliliters. I'm not sure how well you can see that, but 3 milliliters is that line there. If you put in 3.5, it's going to be fine. If you put in 2, it's going to be fine. But of course, the more you dilute it, the less effective it will be. So about 10%. I'm slightly retarded, so I have to be very careful how I do this. My motor skills often lack quite a bit, so I'm going slow. Now, if you're a kid, then be very careful with this stuff. Don't breathe in the ammonia. It is actually not good for you. Now, I got a little bit too much. I'm just taking out a few drops of the stuff there. Now I'm left with about 3 milliliters. You know what? I can live with that. So I just take that, I put it in my little pen flush glass container. Then I'm taking some water. I could do that with an eyedropper, but clearly that's going to take a long time. So what I'm doing is just grabbing my little ink vial again, and I'm just going to pour that in. Of course, it makes a lot of sense to do this at a sink, so that you just have free running water. And then I go up to about that level. I know that is my preferred level, that little rim. Now the final thing I will do is take up a little bit of dishwashing detergent. Why? Well, simple reason is it degreases pens. It decreases, not decreases, it degreases. I'm going to take a fresh eyedropper there. And that degreasing is quite nice, because that's what you use it for when you do the dishes. I'm going to draw up just a smidgen of that stuff, because you don't really need a lot of it. And then you take your flush and you do about 3 drops or something. I would like a little bit more than that. You see, this all goes up there, which is why usually I don't try to be fancy. Usually what I do is just take my little vial and just have a drop or 2 or 3 in there, and that's it. Now I just close up my container, make sure it's nice and tight, and I just shake it around a bit just to mix all the ingredients. You may get a little bit of foam on there, that's fine, you're going to get rid of that soon. And here's your pen flush. It's that simple. What you would do with this is, as I said, first flush your pen the normal way, and then you flush it with this. And what you can do if you have a converter, for example, is just draw up this stuff and also expel it back into the same container. Then you can reuse it quite a bit number of times. As I said before, your pen is already clean because you have already flushed it out the normal manner, and that's all there's to it. And after you've used this, normal tap water once again to make sure that all the ammonia and stuff is out. And that's all there's to it. Here you got your pen flush. It works fine. I use it a lot. I've never had any issues. It has destroyed none of my pens, and it's a very cheap solution. So I hope this was useful, and I'll see you later. Bye bye.